Well, good morning, and thank you everyone for your time this morning. I've really been looking forward to this conversation. We're going to be talking about the cybersecurity essentials for financial executives. Before we dive into that, I wanted to give a brief introduction of myself. So my name is Anthony Lascala. I'm the Director of Cybersecurity Operations for Infracore. We are a national managed service provider or outsourced IT and cybersecurity. We're headquartered here in San Diego. In my career, I have 10 years in IT and cybersecurity. Through that, I've worked with over 50 different organizations in working on their infrastructure, cybersecurity program, and overall systems and IT operations. The last 5 years, I've really had focused on cybersecurity leadership, security program architecture, risk management, and cloud security. I'm a certified information systems security professional, or CISSP, as well as a Microsoft certified cybersecurity architect expert. And through my career, I've had the opportunity to work in industries in fintech, financial services, biotech, healthcare, and government. For the conversation today, we'll be reviewing the financial case for cybersecurity. I want to zoom in on small businesses and put a little focus there. Then we'll look at the 2025 threat landscape forecast. Then we'll dive into some resiliency and cybersecurity, as well as the CFO or financial executive's role in cybersecurity. And I'm not going to leave you empty-handed at the end of this. I'm going to give you 10 questions to take back to your IT and cybersecurity teams that are going to check to see if you are prepared for the 2025 threat landscape and cybersecurity through the year. Before we dive in, I wanted to start off with some key topics and terms that I'm going to be utilizing throughout this conversation to make sure that we're starting on the same page. I'm going to say threat actor a lot. That really just means hacker, malicious actor, bad actor. It's all synonymous. Next is social engineering. I'm definitely going to be referencing this a lot, and that is any attack method that hinges on psychological compromise of a person that alters their behavior into taking an action or breaching confidentiality. This is like phishing or vishing, which is voice phishing, really anything that is intended to dupe someone into performing an action or breaching that confidentiality. Next is ransomware. Now, this is a piece of malware which prevents you from accessing your device or data stored on it, usually by encrypting the device or the data within. Next is a zero-day vulnerability, and this is a vulnerability in a system or device that has been disclosed but not yet patched. So this is a problem or a flaw in a system that doesn't have an update or a fix available for it yet, though it has been disclosed publicly. And then lastly, our supply chain attacks. And this is an attack that targets a weaker element in your organization's supply chain with the intention of attacking your organization. All right. Let's go ahead and dive into the financial case for cybersecurity. As I'm going through this, I have left some time at the end of the presentation for questions. So if you wouldn't mind to please hold those until the end, I'll make sure that I get to you. So for the financial case for cybersecurity, I want to look directly at the financial impact that we're seeing. Right off the bat, we have direct financial loss. So this is fraudulent financial transfers from organization accounts. That's someone in your environment that is actually triggering a transfer out of your account into theirs or another malicious account. We also see this in the form of invoice manipulation, which is a threat actor gets into your environment, they see the flow of your invoices going to your clients, and then they manipulate those invoices so that your clients end up paying them instead of you. Next is lost revenue. So that's downtime that's incurred from security incidents. If your business isn't able to operate normally, it's not going to be making money. And then next is reputational damage. And this is the public perception of your organization and the view of your security as well. If a client can't trust you to securely handle their data, then that can cause some lost business opportunities for your organization. And then also want to highlight regulatory requirements and repercussions. As the years have gone on, we've seen more and more regulations applied to different industries, and we've seen the repercussions for non-compliance with those regulations grow increasingly severe. What we've been seeing recently is personal liability of executives for lapses in financial and security reporting, actual piercing of the corporate veil to hold individuals accountable, and as well as punitive fines from regulatory bodies, which have also been increasing year over year. To get us kicked off with some real world scenarios here, I wanted to touch on a couple of incidents that hit the news. They were big deals, and you may have heard of them just naturally from your news consumption. First up is the MGM Grand hack. So this was started as a social engineering attack. A threat actor reached out to an IT employee for MGM and attempted to dupe them into resetting the password for an MGM user. They were successful in that, gained access to the environment, exfiltrated a bunch of sensitive data, then deployed ransomware, encrypting all of MGM's systems and taking them down. Then, once the threat actors had brought MGM down, they turned around and extorted MGM for not just the decryption key to decrypt all of their systems, bring their business operations back live, but also for the data that they had stolen, threatening to release that sensitive data publicly. MGM estimates that the financial impact of this incident, once it's all said and done, is going to be greater than $100 million. The next incident that I wanted to touch on, which you may have heard of, is the Hong Kong deepfake attack. So this, again, is another social engineering based attack where a phishing email was sent to an employee of that Hong Kong organization to initiate a financial transfer. The next step in the controls for that organization is a video confirmation. The threat actors actually joined a video conference with that employee, posing as executives and other colleagues from that organization, one of which was the impersonating the CFO, which gave the validation to that employee that the employee needed to initiate the transfer of $25 million to a threat actor's account. This incident wasn't even identified, and I know we were talking about that a little bit earlier, about even not knowing when you're hacked. This incident wasn't identified for another week when that employee then was speaking with other colleagues. So those are some of just real world scenarios that we've been seeing over the past couple of years. But I really want to zoom in now on small business. So there are some concerns that we have around small businesses, the reality of the situation, and I come with solutions. Right off the bat, the concerns for small businesses are that they may be lacking in resources or knowledge needed to implement a security program, like a strong security program. They also, they may be assuming that they're too small of a target to reasonably be attacked by threat actors. And lastly, they may be viewing security as a check the box measure for compliance and regulations. Those are the concerns, but here's the reality of the situation. Small businesses are often targeted because they have a perceived lack of focus on cybersecurity. Larger organizations are the ones that are actually investing heavily in cybersecurity, making them much harder targets to actually attack. You may have heard the old adage, when running away from a bear, you don't have to be faster than the bear, just faster than your friend. In this scenario, the large organizations are running faster. Lastly, smaller organizations often lack the recovery capacity of a larger organization, making cyber attacks a more significant threat to the overall business. So we talked about the MGM Grand hack and how that is going to cost over $100 million when it is all said and done. If even a fraction of that impact were applied to smaller businesses, that may be a serious threat to the business and the business continuing operations. So we have solutions, we have concerns, we have solutions. Let's talk about some solutions here. First and foremost is hiring qualified IT and cybersecurity staff internally. This is ideal. You have an internal team, they're focused on IT and cybersecurity, keeping your environment up to date and protected. However, this is the most costly solution. You're bringing on full-time employees, you have to train them, you have career planning, growth planning, as well as you also need to hire knowledgeable leadership to devise a sound security strategy to guide those teams to make sure that they're implementing the correct controls. The alternative solution, which we see small businesses take quite frequently, is hiring an IT or cybersecurity firm to handle that, such as Infracore. This comes with some reduced costs and overhead with fractional resource options, so you don't have to bring on a full-time employee. Vendor supplies, training, benefits, overhead management, overall resource management for that team. As well as this reduces the challenges of finding qualified talent because these vendors specialize in IT and cybersecurity and IT and cybersecurity hiring. There's a big caveat here that I want to cover, and we're going to talk about it a little bit later as we talk about the financial executive's role in cybersecurity. But executive sponsorship is incredibly important to cybersecurity, to maintaining a strong cybersecurity program and maintaining the protections your organization has. And what that means is the executives bolstering cybersecurity, protecting cybersecurity. Like I said, we're gonna talk about that in just a second here. So moving on over to the landscape, looking forward, what do I see as the 2025 threat landscape and some of my key concerns here? We're going to hit artificial intelligence, that's zero-day vulnerabilities, ransomware, and of course, social engineering. All right, I had to have it in here. It's the big buzzword. Everyone's talking about it. It's AI. So when we're talking about AI, there's a couple different areas of AI that are having an impact. One, first is generative AI. These are large language models. This is the ChatGPT, the co-pilots. These have a significant impact on security in both directions. One, they are lowering the skill barrier to get into hacking or becoming a threat actor, as well as they are raising the skill ceiling for advanced threat actors to create more and more sophisticated attacks that are harder to detect. How we see this manifest is in phishing, social engineering, lowering that skill barrier. Language barriers are no longer a problem. The LLMs, the ChatGPTs of the world, can form perfect grammar and correct spelling, language, all of our normal tells that we would see to find a malicious email. Well, now the email's perfect. That is making it much harder to detect these phishing emails. Also, we're seeing these LLMs capable of aiding in exploit and malware development. So it's, again, lowering that skill barrier so that a threat actor may not even need to know how to code or program to be able to put something together, a piece of malware together to infect or attack a system. And then lastly, we have model hijacking. And this is a direct attack of the large language model itself, where a threat actor is trying to probe that ChatGPT or that AI model to extract whatever sensitive information may be held within its data set. So that's more text-based, the large language models, but we also have AI implementations on the audio-visual side, as we saw with that Hong Kong deepfake attack. On that side, we have the deepfakes, which is AI rendering an impersonation of people of another individual, as well as audio spoofing, which is the spoofing of another individual's like voice in order to impersonate them. So these all combined are making detecting and preventing some of these cyber attacks much more challenging as a result. Next up, we have zero-day vulnerabilities. Now, I already kind of mentioned this in the key topics and terms. This is a flaw in a software system that is publicly disclosed, but doesn't have a patch or update or fix available for it yet. Now, we've seen 180% increase in zero-day exploits year over year. And that was from Verizon's 2024 data breach investigation report. These zero-day vulnerabilities are often exploited as a point of entry. They are exploited to gain access to an environment to deploy malware or ransomware. How we combat some of these is by staying up to date on vulnerability disclosures, layering protection so that if one control fails, there's another safeguard or control in there that'll pick up the slack, which we're going to talk about in just a second here, as well as vulnerability management and vulnerability management programs that are designed to identify, track, and remediate vulnerabilities identified within the environment. Coming up next, we have ransomware. So this is an interesting area. So we have seen over the last few years ransomware evolve. And how we've seen that evolve is the old methodology with ransomware was gain access to your systems, deploy ransomware, encrypt all of your data so that you can't actually perform business operations, and then the threat actors turn around and say, we have the decryption key, you have to pay us this ransom to get your systems back up and running. The current methodology, really what we've seen this develop into is now threat actors are gaining access to the environment. Before they're deploying ransomware, they're exfiltrating data. They're taking out any sensitive data they can get their hands on. They're going to try and disrupt your backup procedures, whether that be deleting any of your backup jobs or updating your backup retention policy so that you don't actually keep any of the backups you're taking. And then after that is done, they will deploy ransomware. What this has effectively done has limited the organization's capability to recover from that without paying the ransom to the threat actor because they don't have any backups to restore from. And they're looking at a lot of data loss as a result. And then what the threat actors will do after the ransomware is deployed is they will then hold the decryption key for ransom as they normally would, but then they're also holding the company data for ransom, threatening to release it publicly if the ransom isn't paid. So when we combine ransomware and data extortion attacks, they accounted for 32% of breaches in 2024. So this is definitely a very real concern. And the tactics that are being utilized by the threat actors are evolving to increase the overall impact of each incident. And last but not least, my favorite, social engineering. So I saved social engineering for last on purpose, because I think that this is one of, if not the most significant threat that we will face in 2025. Social engineering in 2024 was used in more than 2/3 of all attacks. And again, just as a refresher, this is really any attack that is intended to dupe someone, to fool someone into performing an action or giving access. And so this is also commonly used as a point of entry for threat actors. And it hinges on that common weak point we see in organizations, which is their employees, at least in terms of their cybersecurity. It doesn't matter how many protections or defenses that you have deployed. If an employee opens the door for a threat actor, the threat actor is going to be able to get in and have some impact. Now, I wanted to take social engineering and also zero in on the audience here today. Some of the threats that you will face being a financial executive for really any organization. And that's a type of social engineering attack that's called whaling. Whaling, it's a type of social engineering that really focuses on a targeted individual, generally a high-level employee or leader at an organization. We see this across C-suite, executives, IT management, HR leadership, but really especially finance, because finance often have the access to the financial data, sensitive information. And so if a threat actor were to attack a targeted financial executive and gain access to their account, the threat actor is going to have more immediate access to sensitive data than if they were to, say, compromise the janitor's account and have to acquire more permissions and acquire more access to sensitive data within the environment. With a CFO being compromised, they have immediate access to that kind of data that they're looking to get to exfiltrate and potentially release publicly or extort the organization for ransom. So those are the key threats that we're looking at in 2025. And let's talk a little bit about what the Cybersecurity Foundation looks like and how we can build resiliency in our cybersecurity. Right off the bat, we're going to hit some layers. I've mentioned that previously. A layered approach is critical. We'll touch on some frameworks and some constant improvement. So a layered approach to cybersecurity. This is what you may hear really frequently whenever you speak with any of us cybersecurity nerds. We always talk about cybersecurity, defense in depth, and layered approach to cybersecurity. What that means is having a layer, having a control that will catch a potential failure of a control that's above it. I wanted to give a brief high-level overview, so this is not all-encompassing, but just to kind of visualize out some of these layers that we're talking about. Looking at email protection. So say we have a phishing email that is being sent to your organization. Well, the front line for that, you have email filtering applied to your organization's email so that if it's identified as a phishing email, it's quarantined or blocked, rejected, it never hits the employee's inbox. But those aren't 100% foolproof. And so say this phishing email does make it to an employee's inbox. Now, this is where the regular cybersecurity training for employees really kicks in, because then the employee identifies, hey, this is a malicious email. I should report this. I shouldn't touch it. I shouldn't click on any links. However, we're human. Humans are fallible. And so then say the employee clicks on a link and gets a login prompt. So they go to log into their email, not knowing that it's a malicious login. Well, that's where we have multi-factor authentication. Either you get codes on your phone from an application when you try to log in. You have to go and type in like a 6-digit code. Maybe you get a push notification on your phone. That helps secure your login in this scenario, because the threat actor may have access to the username and password, but may not have the code that they also need to log into the account. Again, MFA is also not 100% ironclad, and say that that were to fail as a protection. And that's where we come in with the development and testing of a disaster recovery plan. And this is the plan that you have in place so that if all of the other controls fail, you know what your next steps are and you know the procedure to return to business operations. So with these layers, we often see smaller organizations looking for that holistic turnkey solution. The one-stop shop, you implement this and it handles your cybersecurity moving forward. Unfortunately, cybersecurity doesn't work like that. The turnkey solutions today do not provide a holistic enough solution to adequately protect an entire environment. They don't implement enough layers. They don't cover enough territory for that. And the solutions that we're seeing, security is a day-to-day, continuously improving, continuously changing field. If you are not staying up to date on a daily basis, you're falling behind. Next are cybersecurity frameworks. How do we know that our cybersecurity is up to snuff? How do we know that we have the protections in place that we need to adequately protect our organization? And that's where cybersecurity frameworks comes in. They are guides on standard practice cybersecurity protections. They align across several different categories of your organization's technical infrastructure and the security protections that you should have deployed to each. Frameworks add structure to your overall cybersecurity program, allowing you to align with them. And then they also scale with your organization as you grow in both your business size as well as your overall security maturity as you progress with the organization. Some controls that we frequently use at Infracore are Center for Internet Security's Top 18 Controls Framework, or CIS Top 18. And this provides guidance for securing infrastructure across, again, those 18 different categories for your IT and technical infrastructure. It has over 150 different safeguards or technical controls for protection. And it comes across 3 different implementation groups. And the implementation groups are where you see the framework scale with your business. For a burgeoning cybersecurity program for a small business, you may start with implementation group 1, where it's just the foundations, the fundamental cybersecurity protections. As you grow as a business and as a cybersecurity program, you may move to implementation group 2, which is a more advanced set of safeguards that are added on to the initial list of safeguards. And then same process repeats with implementation group 3 as you move to a very mature cybersecurity program. Another framework that we like to use is the National Institute of Standards and Technology Cybersecurity Framework. It's also called NIST CSF. Now, this is very similar to CIS Top 18. It provides guidance for organizations to manage cybersecurity risk. There's definitely plenty of overlap between NIST CSF and CIS Top 18. Now, NIST CSF, it leans a little bit more towards the government, but it can still be utilized across several different organizations. So these are the frameworks. There are several different other frameworks that are available that are solid frameworks. These are just the 2 that we opted for examples today, but it depends on your organization as well as the regulations that your organization is beholden to to determine what framework it best aligns with your organization. Now, let's talk about your role in cybersecurity, the financial executive's role. Now, we've talked a little bit about advocacy, executive sponsorship, but this is really where we're going to dive into how you can help your organization protect itself and aid the cybersecurity team and program in keeping it up to date and a security aware culture at your organization. Executive sponsorship is one of, if not the most critical aspect to a successful cybersecurity program. The cybersecurity team needs the backing of executives and their financial support as well to keep up with the pace that cybersecurity evolves. So right off the bat, as a financial executives, protecting and advocating for the investment of cybersecurity, that's definitely important. But what's also important is advocating for it in regular discussion, championing cybersecurity initiatives, being the executive face of cybersecurity initiatives, protecting cybersecurity initiatives from derailment, not allowing the team that is focused on implementation to be reprioritized to another project when cybersecurity protections are being implemented. Also, as the chief financial executive for the organization, you really should be modeling that security aware behavior for employees while impressing its importance. Someone says, hey, I don't want to use MFA on my accounts. It slows me down too much. Coming back and reinforcing the importance of multi-factor authentication and the protections it gives, goes a long way in towards creating a security aware culture. And then lastly, every organization has business politics. It's just a part of life. But as an executive, you should do your best to insulate the cybersecurity team from those business politics, not letting them be a pawn or a factor in any of those political discussions, because their focus needs to be on protecting the company. Next is vendor vetting. So this is something that we've seen growing in popularity over the recent years. And I think honestly, it's going to explode in popularity over the next few years because everyone needs to be doing this. And this is what helps mitigate the risks posed by supply chain attacks. This is checking your vendors, all vendors that your organization does business with, and ensuring and essentially assessing them to ensure that their security posture aligns with your organization's security posture at a minimum. If they're beating your organization's security posture, even better. But at a minimum, they should be at your organization's security level. Vendors that fail to meet that level should be required to go and remediate those deficiencies prior to doing business with that organization whenever possible. And then reassessments of those vendors should be done at a regular interval. I've seen a lot of organizations that do an annual reassessment or a biannual reassessment. So vendor vetting, big thing, and it's going to become even more important in the next few years. But another key role of financial executives is in the incident response lifecycle. Financial executives frequently hold responsibilities in incident response in making decisions, communication. So they may be communicating with organization stakeholders, affected parties, legal or regulatory bodies. They also may be required to make decisions on remediation steps. Do we take the environment down right now, or do we leave it up? Do we initiate our cybersecurity insurance policy? Do we activate our retained incident response services? And what severity is this incident at that may guide the response? To be prepared for these responsibilities, as a financial executive, you should be staying up to date on the current security posture of your organization. Understand your organization's risk profile and understand where you're strong, where you might have some weaknesses. You should participate in incident response tabletop exercises. So you're actually practicing what you need to do in these incident response scenarios. So when the actual incident occurs, you practice it and it's muscle memory at that point. And then lastly, understanding and frequently reviewing the incident response plan. As the financial executive, you should definitely understand your organization's policies around incident response and where you fit in to that equation and to that plan. So we've hit all of those pieces. And like I said at the very beginning of my conversation with you here today, I'm not going to leave you empty-handed. So I have Infocore's top 10 questions to take back to your IT and security teams in 2025. And this, the real intention of this is these key threats that we're seeing. Do we have the protection, some of the standard protections in place that are going to help us mitigate some of the threats that these pose? Number one is multi-factor authentication deployed to all accounts in the environment. Are SMS or texting and calling disabled as an authentication method? So multi-factor authentication, it's a big thing. It should be on all of your accounts across the board. And where SMS or texting and calling to get that code to enter in when you're logging in, it used to be seen as a secure method to get that code. Intercepting texts or calls is just too easy nowadays to really be seen as a secure method. Really what we should be seeing there are uses of authenticator apps on your phone that link with your account and generate a code. They stay in sync with your account. So rather than having to actually send you a code, it is tied to just that app on your phone. 2, do we perform regular cybersecurity training and phishing campaigns? So this is, again, jumping to that general weakest link in the cybersecurity fabric for any organization, the employees. Are we training our employees adequately to face the threats that they're going to face in 2025? And are we testing them by sending out phishing simulation campaigns or social engineering campaigns to see how they respond when they do receive one of those malicious emails or messages? Number 3, do we vet our vendors for cybersecurity practices? I just talked about that in the last slide. This is super important because supply chain attacks are continuing to increase year over year, and we want to make sure that our entire supply chain is secured and assessed so that we are mitigating those risks as much as possible. 4, are we using systems on Windows 10, Windows Server 2016, or Windows Server 2019? These are all operating system versions that are on their way to being end of life and end of support. What that means is these systems by the end of this year will stop receiving security updates. And so if these operating systems are still in your environment, at the end of this year, my concern would be what vulnerabilities are those starting to accumulate because they're not getting the updates to actually fix those vulnerabilities. 5, is our incident response plan up to date and tested? What about our disaster recovery / business continuity plan? This is checking in on, do we have the plans in place for when an incident happens, when a potential data breach happens, we have the plans in place to recover from them. Do we know how to respond to the incident, as well as do we have the plan in place to bring our systems back live and get business operations running again? 6, have we tested our backups recently? Are our backups and retention policies immutable? And how long would it take to restore all of our systems? So again, really hitting on backups here, kind of focused on that ransomware piece as well. Now that we're seeing threat actors attack the backups, attack the retention policies, we want to make sure, 1, our backups are good. We've tested them recently, that our backups and our retention policies can't be manipulated by threat actors. That's the immutability of those backups and retention policies. And we also want to know, how long is it going to take if our entire organization gets hit? How long will it take to bring all of those systems back to life, get our business operations running again? Is it 1 day? Is it 1 week? Is it 6 weeks, or is it 6 months? And how can our organization adapt and handle such downtime? 7, does our cybersecurity program follow a cybersecurity framework? Has there been a gap analysis against that framework? So this is seeing, do we align our cybersecurity program with an established recommended set of standards? And are we assessing our cybersecurity program against that set of standards on a regular basis? 8, do we have an endpoint system or system protection solution that can protect against ransomware? So we often see this as endpoint detection and response, or EDR, or extended detection and response, XDR. Those types of endpoint protection solutions, they work on some pattern identification technology so that they can essentially identify when your system, if it's starting to encrypt files randomly, but they don't know, like this is a brand new virus, a brand new piece of ransomware that's never been seen before, using pattern-based identification technology in these advanced protections, it'll pick up on just the behavior, even if it doesn't know exactly what's causing it, and it'll lock down the system to prevent further infection. 9, how often do we update our systems? Is the process for the updates efficient and clearly defined? And do we have a process in place for emergency updates? This is hitting on making sure that we have our systems up to date so that vulnerabilities that exist in our systems that do have a fix available, that do have an update available, they're applied regularly and relatively quickly to make sure that we're securing our environment. Also, we want to make sure that the process that we have in place for updating is efficient, it's clearly defined, so that we are paving the way for the security and IT teams to make sure that our systems are up to date. And then we also still need that flexibility and adaptability in there if an emergency update is released by one of our primary software or system vendors that is maybe outside of the normal update schedule. We need to have the adaptability to be able to say, no, wait, this is important. This is a big security risk. We need to go and update now rather than waiting for our next monthly cycle or whatever it may be for your organization. And then 10, do we have the resources needed to manage, update, and maintain our cybersecurity program this year? This is critical. The biggest problem in cybersecurity right now that I'm seeing is a lack of adequate resourcing to stay up to date. Like I said, the cybersecurity is a field that evolves on a daily basis. And if you don't have the adequate resource levels in place to maintain, update, and just overall manage your cybersecurity program, it'll be outdated very, very quickly. So those are Infocore's top 10 questions to ask in IT and security, to ask IT and security in 2025. I want to say thank you. Thank you for your time this morning. Again, my name is Anthony Lascala. I'm with Infocore. If you have more questions, if you have concerns about your environment's cybersecurity, please reach out. I would love to connect with you. We can take a look at your environment and see how we can improve your overall protections.